Welcome to the next episode of Do You Know, a series that sheds light on people and events that have an influence on us in South Africa. My question to you today is, do you know anything about concentration camps? Well, seemingly many South Africans do know that there were concentration camps in South Africa, but the facts around them are vague and sometimes quite controversial. So in Do You Know, we will have 3 episodes where I've invited a guest, a very knowledgeable guest, and he has promised to actually give some answers to the questions that I have. And I'm sure I'm not the only one to ask them. Professor Fransjohan Pretorius, Emeritus Professor of History at the University of Pretoria, has not only written and edited 8 books on the topic of the South African War, but one of his books has also been a runner-up in the Sunday Times Alan Paton Award. So obviously somebody who has studied and is very knowledgeable about concentration camps. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Jolene. Thank you very much.
Well, according to me, war is always a terrible thing in every nation. And along with these wars are camps, whether they are prisoner of war camps or concentration camps. And the more I read about the concentration camps in South Africa, the more I shudder. So please help me unpack this a bit. So my first question to you is, what is a concentration camp?
Well, exactly what the concept says, a camp where civilians, not military people, are concentrated or interned against their will. This is an exact contrast to a refugee camp where people under threat are housed for their safety.
And why are these concentration camps established?
Concentration camps are established for various reasons. The most macabre ones were established by Nazi Germany during World War II for the Jews. And these were specifically established to exterminate these people by means of mass murder like gas chambers or scientific experiments. Normally, in war, concentration camps are established for 2 reasons. One, to remove civilians from the military operational area so that they cannot assist their fighting forces with food and shelter.
Okay.
Secondly, to break down the resistance of the enemy fighting forces so that they want to join their families or realize further resistance is hopeless.
Wow. Okay, so where were they first established?
The first concentration camps in modern warfare were established in Cuba in the unsuccessful revolts, specifically the one of 1895 to 1898, against their Spanish oppressors, that is the Spanish government in Spain, colonial government. And the Spanish government military had General Valeriano Weyler. He was called Butcher Weyler, which tells you quite a lot. Now, Butcher Weyler was the military attaché of Spain to Washington before the Cuban insurrection of 1895 to 1898. And he there was an admirer of General Sherman of the Union forces during the American Civil War of 1861 to 1865. And he was notorious for his scorched earth policy against the Confederate States. So Weyler was impressed with this man and what he did. And what Weyler then went on to was to concentrate in 1896 the local civilians in Cuba by force into little towns or camps and concentrate them therefore, so that they could not assist the rebels or act as peaceful citizens the one day and the next day then be guerrilla fighters again. So anybody caught outside of these camps were liable to be shot.
Sure.
Treatment was harsh, food was of a terrible quality, and diseases created havoc among the inhabitants of these little camps or towns. And at least 100,000 people died in these camps. Then in 1897-98, the Spanish also used these concentrados in the Philippines when they revolted against the Spanish rule. Britain and the United States of America vehemently objected to that. But what is very ironic is that when the United States ousted Spain from the Philippines and took over the Philippines in 1898, they did exactly the same. Housed these people or continued housing these people in their concentration camps.
Yeah.
So this is the human being.
Yeah. So this issue of bad food and diseases and so on is a recurring thing. I mean, it's usually the diseases and the lack of food, or rather the quality of the food that leads to death.
Yes, the reason for that, I think, is in the first place, you put your enemy's civilians in concentration camps. And in the pecking order of, let's say, the British government or the Spanish government, you've got a pecking order where you have to look at your officers first, feed them, house them, and make them happy, and then the non-commissioned officers, and then your soldiers. And then, according to the Geneva Convention, the prisoners of war of the enemy. And now come the concentration camps where you put in civilians. You detest the people anyway. So what you do is, in the pecking order, they're the lowest, and they are not provided for by any means. And therefore, their situation is, to say the least, terrible.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So in general, do you think that these concentration camps and the people that were in them, do they have an impact on the future generations of that society whose members were in those camps?
I'm not exactly sure what the impact on Cuba was. However, it is now more than 4 generations later, and for many years it was believed by the Cubans that 500,000 Cuban civilians died in these camps. You know how people tell their story. This memory seems to have been kept alive by the Cuban government in the time of Castro. But in 1997, they turned down the number of deaths to about 300,000, which is still quite a lot.
Yeah, sure.
It's 3 times higher than the sober number of about 100,000 established by 2 American historians, which shows there is still a lot of emotion about these camps. And being a people who write, who have memories written down, this obviously must have been kept alive. Obviously, the Nazi concentration camps is something different. We know the abhorrence that Western countries still have for those atrocities in camps. So, you know, that's something totally different. These camps were specifically, the Nazi camps were specifically to kill people, whereas the other camps were to take them away from the operational area. Please, 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 just get out of the way. You are assisting the rebels.
Okay, wow. This is something quite interesting. So we will discuss the specific concentration camps in South Africa in the next 2 episodes. But would you mind just telling us quickly how many concentration camps were there in South Africa, and actually why were they established? For the same reasons as the ones in Cuba, or different reasons? Well,
the startling thing is that there were white and black concentration camps in the South African War, or Anglo-Boer War, whatever you want to call it. There were about 38 to 40 white camps, and around about 66 black camps.
What?
They were smaller camps, and many of them were temporary camps. In other words, for instance, black people would be brought to a station along the railway line and kept there for a week or 2 or 3 while another camp is being established, and it would be taken there. So these are temporary camps. So there were 66 black camps. Oh. Incredible. Why were they taken there, these people? the white people, to take them, remove them from their operational area so they could not assist their guerrilla fighters, the Boers on commando, and also not so that to break the resistance of those Boers. The black camps, why were they established? Because they wanted to remove these people from their operational area, because voluntarily or involuntarily, they were assisting the Boers with food, stuffs, and other things. And when the mines, the gold mines on the Witwatersrand were started again in April 1901, they needed labor. And these black people in the black camps were contracted to work in the mines for 3 months, come back, others went back, others went to the mines. So that's the story, the very sad story of our concentration camps.
Sure. Well, I look forward to our next 2 episodes of Do You Know? So thank you for this first one, and we will continue with the whole issue in 2 other episodes. Thank you for today.